where have I been for the past 2 weeks? Not making any videos, and I've kind of forgotten how to speak to the camera for some reason because this is the 5th time I've filmed this intro. I am Jack, this is Spread Book Joy. I love to talk about what I've been reading and ramble about reading, and so this is a reading ramble. So grab a cup of tea or beverage of your choice and let's get into it. The last couple of weeks have been really busy for me. The last video I filmed, which you might enjoy, was a vlog of my perfect bookish day. I hadn't filmed anything for a month at that point, so I thought it was going to be the start of me getting back into filming and booktube, but life's just been busy. I did have a few days to myself because my partner was away. That's why I filmed that vlog and I had the whole weekend to myself, but quite honestly, I just spent it watching TV and relaxing and reading and watching what I wanted to watch and eating what I wanted to eat, all those things you do when you live with someone and they go away. So even though I missed him very, very much, I was so glad when he came back, I tried to make the most of having a bit of time to myself. So yeah, that involved not filming, as it turns out. And I'm trying to be okay with that. You know, YouTube is a hobby for me and I'm trying not to let it dictate my life or make my life performative in any way or my reading performative in any way. So I just thought I'd film a reading ramble today because I want to get a video out. I do want to film and I do want to talk about what I've been reading. And I sat and wrote a list of things to talk to you about or videos that I could make, and I just thought I'm just going to film and I'm just going to talk. I've got a list of things I want to talk about. So life. I am an educator, teacher, so I don't work in school anymore, but I do a variety of different things related to education. We're coming up to the end of the academic year here in the UK. Schools break up at the end of July, so I'm going to be busy for a few more weeks, and then August should be fairly relaxed, hopefully. So that's kind of why I've not been around much, but I have been enjoying Joy Reading because, of course, I'm hosting Joy Reading June, which is an event that my lovely friend Charlie and my wonderful friend Gemma and I are hosting in memory of our dear friend Alice, who passed away last year, and it was all Alice's idea. So Joy Reading is all about reading joyfully, as in not reading things because you feel you have to, reading them because you want to read them, and picking up things that just delight you. It might be that the delight for you is to plan your reading, and that's fine too. So for me, it was more about being okay with reading or not reading, and just reading because I wanted to, not because I felt I had to. So yes, so I've been doing Joy Reading June, and that's been lovely, and part of that was a buddy read. So I'm going to talk to you about my recent reads and recent watching because I've been doing a lot of TV watching and it's tied into my reading a little bit, so I'll talk to you all about that. But my recent reads, well, the biggest read of the month was Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, which I read as a buddy read with my lovely friend Jolene from Bookworm Adventure Girl, and we buddy read this in memory of Alice because it was one of her favourite books, and we planned to do this before we'd been thinking about Joy Reading June for a while, but before we finalised it, Jolene and I had decided we were going to read Demon Copperhead in June. And Demon Copperhead, Alice loved it. She absolutely championed it. So my thoughts on Demon Copperhead, I did have a really good time reading this with Jolene. We really enjoyed the book and we loved the book up until a point. I think we both were in agreement that it wasn't a perfect book for us, but we still had a great time with it, and I was never bored reading this book, and I got a lot out of it. And I thought the pacing of the book at the end was kind of off for me. I felt the first half to 2/3 of the book I was there. I was thinking this is going to be a 5-star read for me. And the main character, if you're not familiar with it, Demon Copperhead, is Barbara Kingsolver's book, which is based on David Copperfield, but it's set in the 90s in Appalachia instead of Victorian London, and it follows the character of Damon, or Demon as he comes to be known as a nickname. Demon Copperhead is his nickname, and he grows up very, very poor in Appalachia in Virginia, and his life, so he's telling you his life story and the misfortunes that befall him. And because it's set in modern times, she has chosen to sort of focus on that area because she is from Appalachia, as it turns out, and David Copperfield is Charles Dickens' most autobiographical work, and it was him highlighting the social injustices and systems that keep people in poverty to the Victorians. And with Barbara Kingsolver's book, she's kind of talking about the opioid crisis and the systemic poverty that is rife in those parts of America. So I didn't realise she was from Appalachia, and so I learned a lot reading this book. I have heard some people say that she's a bit preachy, but I found it informative and I thought it was well done, and I thought the way she gave the information for the most part was really well done. But towards the end of the book, and I don't want to give away spoilers, I found too much happening in the final parts of the book. Now, I've never read David Copperfield, so I don't know how closely she was following the storylines and characters from David Copperfield. So maybe she was trying to follow it faithfully, and the plot lines and the pacing were because of that. I don't know, but I am going to go and read David Copperfield and find out. So it kind of brought the book down from being a complete 5-star amazing book for me. Was the ending. I felt there were so many things going on that seemed to be a little bit rushed or a little bit I don't know, it didn't feel like the same as the first half of the book, which felt very well paced and just, you know, really well done. And I think Jolene and I agreed on it. There was also a relationship that when the way it ended up, I personally didn't like, and if you've read the book, you know, you might know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I personally felt that one of the relationships that turned out the way it did just didn't sit right with me. So yeah, that's why it wasn't a perfect book for me, but still a very, very good read for me. And I'm really grateful that I read it, because The Last King Solver I read was Unsheltered, which was okay. But I had a really great conversations with Jolene about Demon Copperhead, and I learned a lot reading it, and I do recommend it. It is a really good book. I just found the end just a little bit off kilter for me compared to the beginning. So that was Demon Copperhead. We are going to try and read David Copperfield at some point, because I do want to see how closely she based it on those plot lines and characters. I also finished listening to Adam Buxton's I Love You Bye, which is his second biographical book. Adam Buxton is just, I'm a huge fan of Adam Buxton. I love his podcast. If you're not from the UK, you probably won't know who he is. I've mentioned this before, but he was one half of a comedy duo, I suppose, Adam and Joe. They were best friends growing up, Adam and Joe Cornish. So Adam Buxton, Joe Cornish, and Joe Cornish is now a director, a very, very successful director. He directed Attack the Block and The Kid Who Would Be King, and he's just, yeah, he's a very successful director. Adam Buxton runs his own podcast now, and he is not like mainstream, but he is well enough known over here and well loved over here in the UK. And he wrote his first book, Ramble book, he released it during the pandemic, and it was about his life growing up, and it was interspersed with his rambles, which he goes on, so talking about rambling, he rambles in his podcast. When he's introducing his podcast, he goes for walks with his dog, and he does a little introduction, and then he interviews people separately from that. So he did Ramble book, and it was about his dad's passing away, and there was a whole section on how his dad passed away and David Bowie passed away at the same time, and within a few weeks of each other, a few months of each other. And he massive Bowie file, much like myself, so he talked about the impact of both of those things on him, and it was just very poignant, very funny and silly and irreverent in places, but very poignant as well. Adam Buxton is just wonderful. And so I Love You Bye is the follow-up. A lot of people said that there wasn't enough about him and Joe Cornish in their time on the Adam and Joe show, so this one is that in like buckets of it. You've got loads and loads, the whole inside story of him and Joe Cornish. If you get the audiobook, which I highly recommend, you get bonus material. So there's a bonus podcast with Joe Cornish who talks about the book, having read it, and he has some questions for Adam Buxton about it. So I do recommend it. I didn't think it was as good as Ramble book, because there were certain parts in it, like him hanging out with Travis and Radiohead, which I was less interested in, but I think it is definitely one that if you're a fan you will enjoy and worth getting. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. Then in the spirit of Joy Reading June, I was just sitting, had a spare hour, which I wasn't expecting, and I decided to look on my shelves, and I picked up The Moomins and the Great Flood. This special edition was sent from my lovely friend Paula, who is a bookstagrammer. She's Old Bookish Woman on Bookstagram, and she is a lovely person. She had a spare copy of this special edition, 80th anniversary edition of The Moomins and the Great Flood, which was the first Moomins book by Tove Jansson, and it is just delightful, really delightful. And there's a wonderful introduction by Frank Cottrell Boyce, who was, or is he currently, the Children's Laureate? He was, at least in recent years, the Children's Laureate over here. and he wrote a wonderful introduction, and then we have the author's note, Tove Jansson, talking about when she thought about this book and started writing it. And interestingly, in this book, Moomin Mama and Moomin Troll go on a journey to find home, and they are also looking for Moomin Papa, who's gone off on an adventure, and they encounter people, characters along the way and problems, and they help people, and they're going to find their home. But she started writing it in 1939. She said at the start of the war, she didn't feel like drawing pictures didn't feel like a worthwhile thing to do. So she wrote this story, put it away, and then when the war was finishing, a friend persuaded her maybe she could illustrate it and publish it, and so she did. And in the introduction, Frank Cottrell Boyce talks about how at the end of the war, people were trying to make their way home. Fathers were trying to make their way home to their families, and so in some ways it's kind of a bit allegorical about those journeys taken by people after the Second World War to try and find family members, to try and find their homes again. And so yeah, it was a lot more poignant reading it in that light, and I really enjoyed it. What I loved about it is not only the story itself and the illustrations, but at the back there are notes, Tove Jansson's notes on the Moomins, which she wrote for all of the various adaptations, the TV shows, and people that wanted to tell these stories. So she wrote notes on each of the characters, and one of the things I absolutely loved was this quote about Moomin Troll, who is a young boy, and the quote is, "He is of that particular age when summers are long, the water warm, and new things are constantly happening." So she doesn't say, oh, he's about 8 or 9 or 10, but she says that image of childhood being an age when summers are long, the waters are warm, and new things are constantly happening, that magic of childhood. I just love that. And so she describes each of her characters for anyone who's adapting it, and talks about what those characters are about. And so those notes are reproduced here. And yeah, I just found those delightful to read. So that is the first Moomins book I've ever read. I remember watching the TV show when I was younger, and there's a wonderful video on the Moomins and why he loves them by Ali over at A Genteel Black Hole, which I'll post the link to in my description box. We are going to be reading a Moomins book as part of the Reading the Globe YA readathon that I'm co-hosting with Katja from Page Turners with Katja. And yeah, so I'm really looking forward to reading that now, and it is Moomin Papa at Sea, I think. So we're reading that in November and December. So if you'd like to join us for that, that would be wonderful. Talking about Reading the Globe YA, last I spoke to you, I was going to be discussing When Stars Are Scattered. I love this so much. It's a very important book, and I've got a live discussion about it with Katja, which I will leave a link to. We did it on my channel a couple of weeks ago, and it was a great discussion. So if you're interested in this book at all, it's a graphic memoir about Omar Mohammed growing up in the refugee camps in Kenya, and it is middle grade, but I think everyone would get a lot out of it. So I'll leave the link for that below. If you are interested in joining us for Reading the Globe this month and next month, we are reading Kiki's Delivery Service by Eiko Kodono. Eiko Kodono has written so many books. She is still going. She's in her 90s, and she is probably Japan's greatest living children's author. So this was her first, I believe this was her first book, but it is her most famous because of the Studio Ghibli films. So we're going to be reading that this month and next month if you want to join us. I also finished Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, which I'll be discussing with Gemma from Gemma Books as part of our FOMO Book Club live show. We're going to be doing that on Sunday, I want to say 5th or 6th of July, that first weekend in July. So we're doing that, and I'm not sure whose channel it's going to be on, what exact time it is, but watch this space because that's the day we're doing it. Lucy Mangan's Bookish. I loved this. This was a great joy read for me. I listened to this on audiobook and I just raced through it. I felt so seen as a reader. Lucy Mangan's reading life is just so similar to my reading life, and I last read Bookworm, a memoir of childhood reading. I've read it twice and I loved that book. This I loved even more, if it were possible. I didn't think I would. It picks up in her teens at the end of her memoir of her childhood reading. This picks up in her teens and takes through to present day, and she talks about the importance of books in her life, her early reading life in her 20s. She worked as a bookseller in Waterstones. The books that she read and the things that she fell in love with, I absolutely could identify with, and the things that she talked about in terms of organising a home library and in terms of keeping books and storing books, and how her opinion of that has come to change as her life as life has gone on. Really fascinating, and I think any reader would just identify with it and get a lot out of it. I loved it. 5 stars. love this book. I really want to get a physical copy of it so I can physically read it as well. But yeah, what a wonderful book. And the other book that I read that I just found great joy in was All Creatures Great and Small, which is a collection of 2 of James Herriot's books. And James Herriot was a Yorkshire vet in the 1930s, and if you like cosy country memoirs and you've never heard of James Herriot, do give them a go. And I just loved it, and because of that I've been rewatching the show on iPlayer. So the iPlayer has all the old TV adaptations of it, which I remember watching as a kid and my mum and dad loved, and so did I. So that's been nice cosy watching. I've also carried on reading the Walking Dead series. I read volumes 7 and 8, so I'm on season 8 of the TV show, which is getting a bit confusing because the TV show and the books are like very separate. Main events happen, but maybe to different people, or some characters are alive, some are not, some aren't in the books, some aren't in the TV show, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's really interesting the differences in it, but I'm enjoying both formats, though recent characters in the series have made me roll my eyes a little bit in the TV show, not the books. But yeah, so lots of that has been impacting my TV watching, and I've been really enjoying all of that, all of those adaptations. But yes, so those are the things I've been watching and reading. I'm currently reading Brotherless Nights because I picked up a copy in the library. Very good so far, but I feel like it's going to break my heart, so I don't know if I want to carry on reading it at the moment. I started reading A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness, which I've tried to read before, and it should be on paper everything I love: supernatural, dark academia, and I can't remember why I stopped reading it in the past, but I've started it again to try and see if it's something I'll enjoy reading. And I've also been listening to a non-fiction book called The Dress Diary of Mrs. Anne Sykes, which is a historical fiction book all about a diary that was given to a fashion historian, and it was a dress diary where thousands of tiny snippets of fabric were kept by a Victorian lady called Mrs. Anne Sykes, and she's written notes by them all. And so this fashion historian has gone through and painstakingly gone through each of them, and then assembled this idea of her life and the materials and industry at the time. So a really interesting way to approach Victorian history. So far so good. I don't think I'm going to get it finished before it has to go back, because a lot of people are waiting for the audiobook and I don't think I have time to finish it, but you never know. So what have you been reading? Let me know in the comments. Are you interested in any of the books I've mentioned? Have you been reading any joyful books? Anything bringing you joy at the moment? And if you have got this far and you want to leave a comment but you don't know what to say, just leave me a cup of tea emoji, because right now I am gasping for a cup of tea. Oh, and I'm going to leave you with a picture. I did one other joyful thing this month. You might have seen it on a community post. I met the amazing Marilyn Maya Mendoza, whose channel here on BookTube has been one that I've watched for the last 4 years, and we've buddy read together and we've talked. She lives in Hawaii, but she came over to the UK and she was in London for a weekend, and so it was 33 degrees heat here, which is like 91 Fahrenheit apparently. I had to go up to London that day and we had afternoon tea together, and it was just as amazing and surreal as both of us were like, I can't believe we're sitting here together having tea. And that's the joy of BookTube for me, the friends I've met and the people that I've met. And yeah, so I'm showing you some pictures of it now, hopefully. But we talked and talked and talked about books and about life, and she was just even more delightful in real life. So yeah, that was a joyful thing lately. So like I said, let me know in the comments about what you've been reading or any joyful things that have happened to you. Leave me a cup of tea emoji or a piece of cake emoji if you're not sure what to leave. And if you've never been here before and you like this rambling nonsense, maybe subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you again here soon. Bye.